Hello, Inform Scotland followers and friends. I'm so sorry that it has taken me so long to update the stats. I finally did it yesterday and I uploaded them to the website. It's in the graphs section and it's data for the 2nd to the 15th of June. Sorry that I'm also a bit squint. I've got the most ridiculous prop set up here because my phone, its battery is absolutely jiggered, and it has to be charged, and I've had to do this thing. So I'm a bit squint, and sorry about that. I'll try and sit squint so that I don't make you seasick. I was having a wee break from updating the stats because we were seeing this rise in cases, and I wanted to put it into context because I was fairly sure it wasn't going to last. However, it has actually lasted longer than I was imagining, and that in itself is quite telling. So if you go to the website informscotland.uk and go into the section which I now called graphs brackets daily ScotGov data. So the cover image for today's or yesterday's update is this graph here, which I haven't shown before, and I'm going to talk about that in the video later. But what we're basically seeing here is that until recently, positive tests, which are this black line here, were quite a good predictor of hospitalizations or hospital occupancy and ITU occupancy, which are the blue and the red lines here. And you can see that hospital occupancy and ITU occupancy, although they're actually plotted on the two different axes, they follow one another very closely. And deaths, which is the yellow line at the bottom there, the yellow curve, also are quite well matched. But what we're seeing now, post-vaccination rollout, is that this positive test trace is heading for the sky. It's not translating into any increase in hospital occupancy, which is a very important factor. So scrolling through, there's a lot of data in the blog because obviously I've got 14 days of data. You can have a wee look at all that if you're interested. But the graphs are, in my opinion, the interesting bit. Here at graph 1, you can see that positive cases are going up. Now, that is a steep incline, similar and to the incline that we saw in the autumn last year. Now, that is quite strange and unexpected as far as I'm concerned, and it does to me look like it's going to go higher than it did in autumn. If that trajectory continues that it's on, it doesn't look like it's going to slow down to me. Well, it will slow down, but I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. I could be completely wrong about that, but anyway, we'll see. This is the thing about epidemics or whatever. They tend to peak very quickly and then fall away. But I don't know what this is. This isn't really presumably an epidemic because we've got a very vaccinated population and it's summertime, so I'm not quite sure what is going on. It would be lovely to say, oh, but those are just positive cases, maybe we're just doing more tests. However, unfortunately, that does not answer it because the positivity curve, which you can see here, shows a similar increase. Although positivity, it's a positive percentage, is not as high, and it doesn't look like it's going to go as high as it did in the second wave, which is this bump here. Newly tested individuals, something very strange happened on the 9th of June, and you can see that actually overall now the number of newly tested individuals is starting to look really quite flat. It went negative on the 9th of June. I don't know what that's about, but that's the data as they appear on the government stats. So all I can say is that's what was reported. You can see that we did have a much lower number, well, not much lower, well, it actually did go quite low, the number of newly tested individuals daily, but it's now going back up. This is the graph that I was talking about in the first, at the beginning of the video. So basically we're losing the relationship between, or the predictive relationship between positive tests, which is the black line, and hospital and ITU occupancy, which is the blue and red line. Now, I think from Bouncing Kitten, who has updated the website reasonably recently, we think that a lot of the positive tests are coming from young people. Young people, we do not expect to get particularly sick with COVID. They're not going to end up in hospital. They're not going to end up in ITU, statistically speaking. So maybe what we're seeing with the vaccine rollout, which is exactly what the manufacturers have said, is that it doesn't prevent you spreading, it doesn't prevent you catching COVID or SARS-CoV-2 and then developing COVID, but it does make you less sick. Maybe that's what we're seeing. I've included the graph with percentage positivity of new tests. Now, this graph, each of these dots, on the x-axis we have weeks, weeks of the year, and what we find is that there are particular days of the week where we expect to see larger numbers of, higher percentage positive rate. So for example, I just want to check that I'm not saying this wrong. Mondays and Sundays are the highest positivity days. And what you see is that in January, after the vaccine rollout, we had this big spread day to day in the week. I mean, a massive spread, massive differences throughout the week. But then it tightened to a very reproducible positivity rate recently. And of course, now our positivity rate has been going up and the days of the week are becoming more spread out again. So we're seeing a bigger difference from Sunday, Monday, to the rest of the week. Again, I don't know why that is. I've included, just so that we can see where these extra cases are coming from, a while back I plotted the regions and tried to group them together in similar population groups. So I've got Greater Glasgow and Clyde Lanarkshire and Ayrshire and Arran here. They're all kind of similar. Oh, sorry. And what we see is that Glasgow saw a huge and sudden increase in cases, which seems to be flattening off now. Lanarkshire has seen a modest rise, so Glasgow's the blue one, Lanarkshire's the yellow one, and it's seen a very modest rise recently, very, very modest indeed, in fact. And then the orange line is Ayrshire and Arran, and you'll see that actually recently here, it's reached a peak. Oh, just falling off my chair there, sorry. It's reached a peak similar in size to the January peak. That's just absolute numbers, so you don't need to read too much into it, but it is quite interesting that we're seeing this in the summertime. Lothian, Tayside and Grampian is even more interesting. So we're seeing in Lothian, that's the blue line, a current rise. We're almost at the level that we were at in January. The yellow is Tayside, and it's looking fairly similar in size as well, but Grampian is nothing like as big as it was in January. Then we have Fife and Forth Valley. Really, try it that way, really nothing much is happening there. And Borders, Dumfries and Galloway and Highland, absolutely nothing is going on. Community testing is on the rise again. So this is the graph. The blue spikes are community tests and the red spikes are NHS tests. And you can see that there has been a sort of filling out, if you like, in the body of the blue spikes recently, in most recent days. The NHS tests are remaining fairly constant now, but they have risen a lot since autumn. So this is quite interesting, I think. If you look at that, the change that we're seeing, the NHS is doing so many tests, so many more than they used to do, but the community kind of fell away, but now it's rising again. It's just such an enormous amount of testing that we are doing. And I'm just not clear what the benefit of that is at all. I've put this graph in here now. Quite interestingly, they're finally using the Golden Jubilee for putting COVID patients in, which seems like a great idea. The red line is Glasgow. So this graph starts in April, just so that you can see what's going on better. So Glasgow has had a falling away of hospital occupancy and then a recent rise. That's this red line here, and it's now falling away again. All the other hospitals which are in there are just kind of a noisy mess, to be honest. There's not really much going on. They're bumping along. I think that's probably a sort of statistical noise that we're seeing there. That's just the baseline. And like I say, the Golden Jubilee now has some patients in it and I've been quite surprised I've not been using that hospital more, because it's modern, good infection control. Quite a lot of people have been saying that they can't understand, like a lot of the health professionals that I've spoken to have been saying they can't understand why we've not been using the Golden Jubilee more. Vaccinations. Vaccinations are quite interesting. Now, in the first graph here, you can see the red line is positive tests. The yellow line is vaccinations, and the green line is, the yellow line's first doses and the green line is second doses. You can see that second doses are catching up now to first doses, which tells you that first doses are slowing down. I think second doses are kind of remaining constant, but the fact that one's catching up with the other does tell you something, because ideally you would have thought if everyone was getting their first dose and then getting their second dose, I mean, ideally from the Scottish Government's point of view, if everyone was getting their second dose, these should remain parallel. So clearly something is happening. People aren't going for their second dose having had their first one in the same numbers, and I think it does look like first doses are slowing down. I have some questions about the number of vaccinations being reported, because we're currently sitting at this yellow line. We're approaching 4 million people in Scotland having had their first dose. Now, we have a population of 5.5 million, and I don't really think we've started vaccinating the under 30s in any great numbers yet. So I think I'm not quite clear if this is vaccinations offered or vaccinations delivered, and we are trying to double check that with the Scottish Government. We put in a Freedom of Information request, and we were told that the information is coming out through Public Health Scotland soon. So hopefully that will happen. And this line here, this spiky one, is just again the first doses are the blue line and the blue spikes, and second doses are the red spikes. And you can see that first doses are kind of bumbling along at quite a steady rate, and so are second doses now, but there's been some ups and downs. And then the final graph, which is not such good news, is the ONS Prevalence Survey report. So in the winter, we had lots of COVID about, which is exactly what you would, I say COVID, SARS-CoV-2 about, which is what you would expect. And then it fell away to summer levels. And then something happened 3 weeks ago, and it surged quite extraordinary. And then it dropped a wee bit the following weekend, and now it's back up again. So we're currently at 1 in 540 people in the community have COVID, I think, or are testing positive in the ONS Prevalence Survey. This is quite strange. 1 in 540 people. It's quite strange for a summertime, especially with the number of people. Especially with the number of people vaccinated as we have, but that's what the numbers say. This is not what we saw last summer. Last summer we saw declining positivity in the population in the summertime. That's been kind of a long update, but there were quite a lot of things to say there. Basically, the take-home message is we seem to have more COVID about, or more SARS-CoV-2 about, but nothing really is happening in the hospitals except for quite good news. So you would think that we would all be able to celebrate that, but good news is banned. But not on this channel. There's a few things going on the Inform Scotland website. We have actually been quite busy. I've been quite personally busy, but we've also been quite busy with the Inform Scotland group. There's a few things going on. We're about to put up a list of questions that we would suggest that people might like to ask when they go for their vaccination appointment, just to make sure that they're giving informed consent, which is very, very important. There's also still the vaccine information leaflet letter. If you want to print that out and deliver that to your local GP or hospital, just anywhere that you think might be interested in reading it, please do so. And all the best to you. Thank you so much for your attention. Stay sane, stay strong, stay tuned, and remember, I love you. Bye.